Tēnā tātou ngā mihi nui kia koutou, nau mahara mai te whānau kaunihere, nau mahara mai ngā manuhiri, kia ora, e ngā rangatira, kia rangitāne. Kei te timata tēnei hui ki te karakia naenei. Kei te karakia tātou, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. He hihi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Well, kia ora and welcome everybody. Lovely to see you. Welcome to the last meeting of Te Tiriti or Waitangi Komiti for this triennium. Can I just begin by saying it's been a learning journey for our Tiriti Komiti. It's been one where we've had lots of conversations with our people, built closer relationships, and I just want to thank our 6 iwi for their participation and support for Te Tiriti or Waitangi Komiti. We've certainly learned a few things along the way, and let's hope that we can build this into the next triennium for the next set of councillors who are lucky enough to be elected. So let me then just first start with some apologies from Councillor Kurt Benand. We've got we've got councillors online. That would be Councillor Nash, Councillor Laban, is he with us? Kia ora, Councillor Laban, Councillor Duthie, and Councillor Wolf. Apologies and minutes need to be moved and seconded. So can we have any apologies? Kia ora, Ros, Councillor, and Dave. Public participation are on their way. So what do we suggest we do? We carry on with the items and delay that a bit. Is that all right, whānau?
I'm happy to move that public participation, we hear the guests when they arrive.
Kia ora, can I have someone second that, please? Kia ora, Ros. Okay, we've got a couple of changes to the order of the agenda as well. We're going to move item, what was 7 to item 5, item 5 to item 6, and item 6 becomes item 7. Ka pai? O kia ora, nau mahara mai rangitāne. Okay. Firstly, while they're settling in, kia ora, Councillor Ponta, can we have conflicts of interest declared? Carl? Public participation? We're deferring that till, yeah. And just to confirm, can I have someone confirm the last public minutes of Te Tiriti o Waitangi Komiti? Ros and Yadna. Kia ora whānau. Over to you.
Tini whetu ki te rangi ko rangitāne ki te whenua, rangitāne ki runga, rangitāne ki raro, rangitāne ki waho, rangitāne ki roto. Neira te kaupapa me te moimoia o rangitāne tu maira no tamaki nui a rua me Wairarapa. No reira mihi nui ki a koutou katoa. Ko te me tuatahi ngā mana whenua o tēnei whenua Ngāti Tō Rangatira, te Atiawa me te Atiawa ki Taranaki Whānui, whakanuia ki a rātou. Ko te mea tuarua e te tiamana kei a koe hikitia. Ngāti Tō Rangatira, mihi nui ki a koe mō tō mihi aroha, mihi maioha ki a mātou. Te iwi me te whānau o rangitāne tu maira. E te komiti Te Tiriti o Waitangi, kia kaha tō kaupapa, kia kaha tō kaupapa. No reira, kaore e kūmero te kōrero, nā te mea he nui ngā take ke mua i a tātou. No reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora no tātou katoa. First and foremost, thank you very much, Komiti, for having our whānau come to you today to lodge our taonga with you, our hāmuatanga taonga. What I'd like to do is just introduce our little team that has come here. We go everywhere together. The only time we don't go everywhere together is when I'm at the WRLC meeting. Hoi anō, we're moving along. For those of you that don't know us, my name is Darren Apanui. I'm the CEO of Rangitane Tumaira Settlement Entity, and I'll let my team introduce themselves. Okay,
O atamari te Tiriti komiti, ko hene irarangi PS tōku ingoa, he uri o Rangitane o Tāmaki Nuairua me Wairarapa, and I am the Environmental and Resource Management Advisor for Tumaira. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, ko Tipene Chris tōku ingoa. I'm Tipene, I'm the Chief Policy Advisor for Rangitane Tumaira.
So many microphones. What we would like to do is just, I know that you have received your papers, so we will take it that these papers have been read by the committee. Thank you very much. We're here to introduce and to lodge hamuatanga te mahere whakahaere o Rangitane Tumaira. It is our iwi environmental management plan, and it acts as an umbrella over our tūrohe, which is Tamaki Nui Arua, which is in the top northern part, Dannevirke, Tararua area, covering all the area down to Waitangi. For those of you that don't know, Rangitane also comes over the hill a little bit, and we also touch into the top, well, to the bottom end of the North Island, sitting alongside the whānau of Tiatiawa, so I just thought I'd share that with you. And so our environmental plan covers all of that area all the way back up to Dannevirke. I think one of the key things, two key things, and if we could just have the slide up. How do we operate the slides? Oh, okay.
You're in charge, Darren. You're in charge.
Okay, sorry, I didn't realise that we had this type of technology. We are not. That one. Where do I point it? Kapai. So for those of you that can see that, the intent of our plan is to ensure that it sits as an umbrella over all the things that we do, that it supports and uplifts all of the work that we do in the Te Taiao space for Rangitane. It also gives us, or gives you, the position of how Rangitane fits within the Te Taiao space, how we want it to operate, and how you can work alongside us. And I think the other part is that it just gives you some guidance and some step-by-step frameworks and ideas of how to work with us on a range of different things. Now, we do realise that you are the regional council, and we sit in a very unusual space. We have to cover 4 councils, local councils, and we have 2 regional councils that we have to cover. So this particular presentation is the first, and we expect to do a similar one with Horizons. But this is just to give you an understanding of how we connect with you, and also how we connect with Horizons, and how we connect with the local district councils. The other part is that what this plan is, what it's not meant to do, and that is to replace any planning documents that is already in play. Now, we have 2 rūranga within our takiwā, and both of them have their own environmental plans and documents. This is not to replace that. This is to sit alongside and enhance those plans. The second one is that it's not about alleviating any obligations to consult. We still believe that there is an opportunity to consult with us, and we would also look to be able to have that same type of opportunity with you. What we're going to do now is that we're going to pass it over to the actual author of our taonga, of Hamuatanga, and I'll give the space now to Hine Irirangi Pierce. Kia ora, Hine.
Kia ora. So I just thought I would talk about the contents of it and just like brief summary over each one. So when we look at section 1, He Kupu Arataki, that whole part is just gives a brief introduction to the plan itself, what its purpose is and how it was developed. And that the plan is to monitor well, our plan is to, as it goes throughout this year, is to plan and monitor its and assess its effectiveness out there with our whānau and with our councils and other stakeholders and users of this document. The idea is to, at the end of this year and beginning of next year, have a bit of a review of it. And as we know, with all the legislation changes that are happening at the moment, that things are going to be needed to be updated in this document because we want to keep it. It's a living document. So we will look to do that in the new year, end of the year, new year, and then thereafter, every 5 years sort of thing is kind of the plan and idea around updating it so that it keeps relevant to how our whānau, hapu, iwi, and such as yourselves, councils, and other stakeholders and users, it's relevant to them. It gives a bit of an overview of Rangitani o Wairarapa and Rangitani o Tāmaki Nui Arua. And we list in there our hapu and our marae, which we have in a bit of a visual way so that it's really, embracing of our whānau, and so that those that need to use it for whatever resources or activities, that they know who the people are that they need to consult with, who the whānau are for that area. So section 2, hononga, our relationships and engagement section. That is just all about how we would like councils, and our resource users and others, how we would like them to work with us and to build relationships and engage with us on whatever various activities and projects that they're wanting to do within our rohe, within our takiwā. Section 3, the legislation and planning framework section, just provides a bit of information on our various iwi planning documents that our runanga have. So our runanga, Rangitani o Wairarapa, have Te Ia Wairua, which we make mention within our document, and we wanted to make sure that whoever is reading our document knows that these other management planning tools are out there. And to make them aware of it. It contains Te Tiriti o Waitangi and other major central government environmental legislation, and also regional, just touches on what regional and local government regulatory instruments that may be applicable to ourselves, to Maira, and to our whānau hapu and runanga when dealing with te tai ao mahi. We wanted to bring it into one document so that our whānau could go to this tool and be able to have a look and, okay, I need to go and have a talk with this council or with this government organisation for whatever reason. So section 4 is our cultural matters, and we only lightly touch on what our rangitani values are, because our runanga and our whānau on the ground, they are the ones that we want councils, resource users to go to and actually hear those stories from our whānau. So we just make mention of it lightly just to help guide. It also talks about what we would like, or how we would like scientific research proposals to be dealt with, and our aspirations for data sovereignty. And like I say, just a small table on our rangitani values, just to give you a bit of a taster, a bit of an insight into what they are. Section 5 is our big section, so that's our environmental framework. And we have a brief breakdown of each of the 8 listed environmental taonga areas, or the issues we see. And that list is not exhaustive, that's in there. It's just a bit of a beginning, somewhere to start from, and what currently are some of the issues out there that we've been dealing with, the runanga have been dealing with, our whānau have been dealing with, and what we are dealing with still today. But it leaves the door open for what we might have in the future in regards to environmental. So like I say, it's just that bit of a starting point, and will enable, or give the ability to capture what else might come. Section 6, we just wanted to bring some of our, like with our regional and district plans and bylaws and whatnot, we wanted to bring our central government regulatory instruments into this document so that our whānau and our hapu and ourselves have something that we can refer to. It just summarises some of the specific points and clauses that make mention of iwi Māori within those documents. So that starting point and guide for us to be able to utilise as a tool. And like I said, with our issues, that list in that section is not exhaustive either. It's just a little bit of a touch on it. But that's basically what's within our document, in a real quick summary of it. So I just wanted to give a bit of a picture view of what's within our Section 5, our environmental framework, where it looks at what our environmental issues are, what our cultural connection is, and what our values are in this space. So it breaks it down into what, how we would like, or what management options we would like to offer, what some of our action points for reducing risks are within those issues, what some of our mitigation measures are, and then some of the various legislation. And it's just touching on, well, so that our whānau know that these are some of the legislation that's out there that you might want to be able to, or you could go and have a look at when you're dealing with such a project or an impact that is happening within your area, within your space for our whānau. But it's just a bit of a look into and a bit of a heads up of what our whānau might be wanting to talk about in a lot more detail. So here it is. Now go and have a talk with the relevant whānau, the runanga, and then they would to start that discussion and that engagement. So that was just wanted to showcase that this is something. These are some tables that are in there with a bit of a breakdown. And then we just finally wanted to give you or show you that these are our online links to our IEMP, which is online on our Tū Maira website. So I just wanted to sort of showcase that that's where they are. Parau.
Thank you. Kia ora, Hirirangi. So, as the author, obviously she has a lot of knowledge on her document, and to try and knock it into 5 minutes when it took her 12 months to write the document, bloody hard job to do. Hoi anō, she got through it, so thank you very much. Tipene and I are here to take questions. Well, all three of us are here to take questions. Over to you. Kia ora.
And thank you very much for a very fulsome document. It's I'm a little bit jealous, I have to say, and some really important road signs there. So can I open the floor for any comments, questions that councillors might have? Councillor Ponta, Councillor Connolly, Councillor Staples, in that order. Kia ora.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora tātou. Very impressive document. Just a couple of questions. Just looking at where does it fit your iwi management plan? Does it fit alongside the RPS in terms of a guiding? It's almost like a resource now, so it's more of a toolkit rather than the high-level principles. Is that correct?
Yes, this is a tool for us to introduce ourselves to you so that you know what to expect whenever you engage with rangitane. Aye.
And because it's, I'm assuming this is the first, and are you going to open source it? Share the best practice.
We've published it on our website. We want to promote its use, so hence we're here having the conversation today, and you know, more than happy to share where we've got to with this document. It is a living document. It will be progressively updated, but yeah, no, really keen to share. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So, welcome. Brilliant document, very good. Always love a good plan. So I turned to the map on 112 of our papers, so the one that you've included in the document, and perhaps a question that reflects more on us at the moment than it might on you, but what that sort of seems to speak to is sort of local government reform, if you like. The fact that you span 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 councils, two, including Upper Hutt and Lower Hutt, and I wasn't actually sure whether you didn't actually go into Central Hawke's Bay at all, and therefore the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, so add in another 2 if you do. Um, I'm not sure if it's a question, but I think that this has got to be simpler in terms of your interactions and your interfaces. So I suppose my question is whether you have any thoughts on what local government reform might mean and how you might respond as rangatani / kahungunu even to the idea of local government reform, and whether you can conceive of boundaries being cut on an iwi basis, perhaps iwi / catchment basis, rather than some of the arcane boundaries that we currently have. So that's my first question, and then my second question is that is really an observation that you're delivering this plan at a difficult time for all of us, and you'll be very conscious that the RM reform stuff is about to land with a signal of a bill before Christmas. So I suppose I'm just trying to get a sense of whether you're already attuned to that and thinking about the 2.0 version of this for that environment, or whether this just sits on the table for a while until things settle down to some extent. So 2 questions.
Thank you, Councillor. If I just pick up a couple of points and perhaps in reverse order in terms of the RM reforms, yeah, there's a lot going on and we've been submitting, and Henerirangi's been a real Trojan sort of getting across the different packages. From our perspective, what we're talking about today is a tool to support our relationship with you. That the fact that we're here talking is, the relationship is really important. And yes, RM reforms will come, there'll be more in the future, undoubtedly, but building the relationship and really locking it in with you is the thing that's going to stand us in good stead, in my perspective. And one of the things that was lovely coming this morning was in the iwi room, there's a photo of the agreement in 1993, and seeing our kaumātua there, warmed our hearts, made us feel welcome. So really, we need to build a strong relationship with you that will last through different iterations of resource management reform. In terms of your first question, Councillor, we were really pleased that the 4 Wairarapa councils voted to adopt a common water entity over the last month or so. It aligns with our iwi boundary. It means that we're going to have one water entity to be engaging with. So there is a real strength in that from our perspective. But in the meantime, we're going to continue building our relationships, because rangitani want to be an integral part of Aotearoa and the Greater Wellington region.
Councillor Conley.
Kia ora, team. Thank you for sharing this document with us and talking it through, and thank you for coming over the hill today and presenting it to us. It's awesome to have you here. A few of the other councillors have alluded to this question of where this plan fits. Just heads up, Fatima in the back. I wondered if you could also answer this question, so maybe you could come to the table. But my question is, you say that it doesn't replace any existing plans, but the way I read it, particularly in terms of the freshwater objectives, ensure no discharges of wastewater, encourage progressive reduction of existing discharges. Like, these are the stuff of the existing plans, and how do you envisage we actually make progress in achieving these if we're not going to kind of open up the existing plans and put them firmly? And then my question for Fatima was, how are we going to incorporate this? A lot of the documentation in terms of, so it's covered in the paper, but a lot of it relates to resource consents. Again, I feel like the proper place to address a lot of these things is in the planning space. And so I'm unclear, without going near the plans, how we actually fulfil some of your aspirations.
Maybe pick up, Darren's mic, just so that the team online can hear you.
Kia ora. So two-prong approach. One is for all of our regional plans, which includes RPS and NRP, Regional Policy Statement and Natural Resources Plan. Current RMA states that we have to take into account the IMPs. So we cannot not take into account. Just to highlight, lots of our provisions in both RPS and NRP do go further than take into account. I also want to highlight, we have Te Mana o Te Wai statements that need to be recognized and provided for in the RPS, which is way higher than take into account. In the consenting space, it's a little bit more layered. There's no direction in RMA does have to be taken into account. However, the part 2 needs to be considered in consenting space, so that they need to consider, consenting officers need to consider Maori values, they need to consider all of those points, and that's where IMP comes into play. So consenting officer will need to take IMP, look at it really closely when they are assessing the consenting applications, but also the applicants are also key in using the IMP when they are actually putting the application together.
If I could just add a little bit to that through you, Madam Chair. The Wairarapa Moana Statutory Board is, Rangitane are part of the Wairarapa Moana Statutory Board. This document sets out our aspirations, our values, so we're really clear. Greater Wellington are part of that as well. And one of the things that we've been really pleased with is just getting some core data from the Greater Wellington team about the Ruamahanga River catchment. The most recent piece of work has focused on us saying, here's what's really important for us. We'd like to understand what's going on with the catchment. And the Greater Wellington team responding with some data about not individual consents, but a global picture of all the consents along the catchment, how much is being taken, at what points. So we get that global picture as well. So it's a really useful tool to help us sort of at a very detailed level, being very clear on what we're expecting, but also to give guidance at a meso level as well.
And just to, I suppose, close the whole conversation off for you, Councillor, is that the plan, when we were talking about that, it doesn't supersede any other plans. We were just talking purely about the iwi plans. We weren't talking about any council plans or anything like that. So it was very clearly delineated what side of the fence we were trying to actually fix at that particular point in time. And lastly, part of our treaty settlement is that we were able to create an iwi management environmental plan for our whole takiwa. Kia ora.
Councillor Staples.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My questions have been touched on by my colleagues, but they're along the same lines. And I'm looking at page 91 in our papers that has a nice little layered picture of how things sit. And our regional plan has to give effect to our policy statement, which has to give effect to our national policy statement. But our iwi management plans are sitting between our regional plan and our regional policy statement. And so am I correct in assuming that there is no legislative requirement for us to give effect to your plan, but it is best practice. And given that we have an iwi partnership relationship, it would be pretty awful if we were not being more than cognizant. We were actually using this as a living document for our planning structure. Am I getting this right here? And I've got one more after that.
Oh, sorry, Councillor. Yeah, look, could not quote chapter and verse the resource management legislation or the Local Government Act 2002. But you're absolutely right that this is about us building our relationship with you, being really clear about what's important for us, understanding from you what's important from you, making sure that those two things can talk to each other. And that's the thing that's going to stand us all in good stead from our perspective.
Thank you. And my second question comes wearing my Councillor Warareka Moana Statutory Board member hat. So can you give me how are you hoping that this document is going to inform our board and the planning work that we have to do, which is, you know, looking like a monumental cliff sitting in front of us at the moment? And just before I finish, plans that we have already in place, like our Waitangi River Management Plan, that did have good iwi input, that's a living document as well. How are you hoping that our new living document is going to inform these existing but living documents? If you do have aspirations on that one. Thanks.
If I start with the Wairarapa Moana Statutory Board and sort of reflect on our conversation last week, the purpose of the iwi Environmental Management Plan is to set out our values, what's important for us, what our expectations are. So you will be profoundly unsurprised at the Wairarapa Moana Statutory Board table to hear us talking about these types of things. And, you know, we spoke last week about the importance to Rangitane of the Ruamahanga River catchment, and so I've given the example this morning. So just the ability for us to really set out these things are important for us. This is the frame of reference. This is what we will go back to as a starting point when we come to those fora. I think that's the key point that we want to emphasise.
Councillor Saw.
Thank you for this. As there's something for everyone in it, and it's written down so no one can say they didn't know. I think my question is quite similar to some of my colleagues, and you know, a lot of what Councillor Connolly was saying around the freshwater space and how we manage our wastewater and those systems seem very aligned with the direction of this particular council, and hopefully continuing on to our next council. I know Ros will definitely be there, so we can count on that. But what I see underneath that is the operationalizing and the implementation, and in some ways almost socializing the aspirations and repositioning people's relationship with natural resources in terms of how it's not stopping people using it, it's getting to reconsider that. So in that, how do you see Greater Wellington and Rangitane and what are working together to do that, to find a growing coalition of friends and allies? And what are your expectations of us to support you in that kaupapa?
Thank you. Clearly what we've got is, as our iwi Environmental Management Plan, our priorities, our values, and you know, we need to lay that as the foundation. The next step, as you say, would be to actually spend more time together to figure out, so okay, here are the things that are being delivered in, say, 25-26 financial year, to understand that for us to be able to have that conversation about influencing, you know, using this as a tool to influence the shape of your work program for the coming financial year, and then to establish a set of metrics so that when we come back in a year's time, we can have the conversation where, you know, rates were directed to these activities, Here's the rangitane interest in those activities, here's what's been achieved, so that we can use this as a foundation for supporting an operational planning approach, some metrics, some regular conversations about progress would be really important. And just, I'm going to steal my boss's thunder. We would love to host Greater Wellington in 3 months' time, once you've gone through the electoral cycle, to have the next round of this conversation.
And I saw your finger going to touch your microphone there, Councillor, so just before you ask your next question, I just thought I'd wrap this part up. And that is, I love the comment that you talked about, the coalition of the willing. If we weren't willing, we wouldn't be here today. So I think we've already got the willingness to want to sit down with you. One of the key things that we have to do on our side too is that with all plans you have to have some type of implementation process. And I think the very first part, and bless Hine Irirangi's soul on this one, because it took you 12 months to write the whole document. So I think she needs a little bit of a break before we move to the next phase of looking at the implementation process. But as part of that implementation process is that it can't be in isolation. And so hence the coalition of the willing. That's why we're here today. One, to lodge it formally. Secondly, to take these questions. Thirdly, to take the invite and offer it to you. And fourthly, to be able to work together on what could be an implementation process that is successful for us, not only in the next 12 months, but in the next 5, 10, 15, 30 odd years. Kia ora.
Okay, so I have a little stretch goal or an extra whittle, which is, how is it, if we have this coalition of willing, how do we grow it and get the others on side? Because when we talk about some of the the aspirations, it isn't just us that's required. It will be a few others that we need to. So that was the bit I was saying. I'm wondering about, what are your expectations of us and how do we grow that?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I think strange though about relationships, it's got to start with two. And we've got to actually cement what we can do together successfully first. And what that does is that hopefully if we do it properly and well together, that creates the opportunity for other people to see it and want to join. We have just digressing a little bit, we have a solar company, and we always say to any new client, all we need is just one building to put some solar on, and then you can see whether we're good enough to be partners with you. And I think that's part of this process too, Councillor, is how do we actually play well together in the paddock. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, tēnei te mihi ki a koutou mō tō whakaroa tēnei wā. Me ngā rangatira, kia ora. Thank you very much. I feel like I've been wowed. So I'm really impressed with your report. Thank you so much. I hope we get to pick up that invitation next year, should councillors get elected again, and should the Tiriti or Waitangi Komiti continue to exist. We'll be there. We started off coming out to our 6 iwi, and actually we covered them all actually, but yeah, there should be more regular hui out there with our people. Kia ora. Yeah.
Given the how important this document is, the invitation, hopefully, that we receive with the new council, will that involve council being actually able to receive and accept this document? I don't think it's quite correct for it to be at this council, at this meeting. It's something that our council as a whole, our governing body, at the top tier, is doing with a partner at the top tier. So will we be doing that in the new triennium, I think, because I think it warrants it.
Gonna ask Lucas to respond.
Through you, Chair, this report is for information, so that's probably best for this body. It is appropriate for council to formally receive and note it. That could mean that this council could receive it at the next meeting or the final meeting, or the new council can receive it in the new triennium. But we will take your advice on that.
So can I just follow up on that? So my memory serves me correctly. The iwi management plans still have the status of take into account in the RMA in terms of what we need to do. And so I agree that at some point we need to take the step of sort of formally recognising the document. So I'm trying to be careful here. It's your document at the end of the day. It's not our document, but we have legal obligations, and I think we and our staff need to know that this is our document for Rangatani until such time that you say it isn't or amend it. And so I think we do need to go through that formal step ourselves to give you confidence that the document that you've put on the table has mana, and that there's a formal process that we then have to entertain every time we are looking for changes in our own planning documentation. So I agree with what you've put on the table, Councillor Staples.
So all I would like to say to this conversation is that an invitation will come. How you want to come to us will be up to you, but it'll be an invitation to the regional council. Kia ora.
And I think as an next step, am I correct, Luke, we can actually receive it today, or the council receive it at its next meeting?
It's more appropriate for council to receive it, so that can be a report to the next council meeting if that's feasible for officers to do. Otherwise it can go to the council meeting after that, but it's a council decision to receive the
Ka pai.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'd be very happy to recommend that we forward it to council. Ka pai. Do I need somebody to move that and second?
So we can just note this, otherwise the committee can formally recommend to council to receive a note.
Could we lock that in? I think that's an important. Kia ora. Thank you.
Do you want to move that?
I do want to move that. Kia ora, and seconded by. Thank you very much.
Say for Kānga then for that one.
Yeah, that's a karanga whānau. Kia ora. Okay, can we just briefly, because we're going to go back to public participation, and can I invite definitely the funniest rangatira in Ngāti Toa to the table. Kia ora Rawari, no mai. We're going back to the public participation, which is your part. Kei te pai? You're on. So we're going back to public participation, which is, there's a few rules with that, as you know, but
Just here really to talk.
okay, so we've got 5 minutes. A bell will ring, a card will go up. Can you do that with the funniest man in Aotearoa? I don't know. Okay, now we can. That's right, I'm in control here.
I reckon. Is this on?
Okay, can I introduce Rawiri Faulkner from Ngāti Toa, who's going to talk to us this morning.
Kia ora. Tūtai tēnei te mihi ki a koutou katoa, mo tō awhi te kaupapa ki Wainganui o tātou nei whanui o ngā iwi, o te rohe, o whanganui atara, nei rā te mihi ki a koutou katoa. Just going to take a couple of minutes and literally a couple of minutes just to thank you for the opportunity to come along and speak to some of the kaupapa that are on our agenda today in a very broad context. And one of the things that I would like to do is just, I suppose, plant a bit of a seed for council and iwi to think about, and then put a bit of a wedo on the table or a little bit of a challenge for us moving forward. It's very good to actually follow the kōrero that Rangitane have just given us about the IEMP, we're on the same journey, and we're about to toddle along and present a very similar thing to the council, probably before Christmas, if not early in the new year. One of the things I'd like to share with the council is that it is easy to look at an IEMP or any planning document through a compliance or a requirement lens. And it certainly is the door by which we open to allow these conversations to happen. But the richer and more important way to look at iwi management plans is to look at how we can both reflect and see ourselves in broader aspirations being achieved through working together and understanding the perspectives that we both bring to the table, not just regulatory, but a deep sense of commitment to the things that matter to us as people and to the communities by which we serve. And so we will be coming along to share that, and I would welcome the opportunity for us to share what it is we want those documents to be that's not bound by a regulatory requirement for us to do so. Anyway, that's another conversation for another day. One of the things I would like to speak to, as I see on the agenda today, two things that I'd quickly like to cover off. One is the kaupapa investment process, and the other is the treaty commitments. Firstly, starting with the treaty commitments kaupapa that's on the table. I want to congratulate the council in being an organisation who are proactively looking at how they respond to and meet the requirements that are set out in a treaty settlement as a very conscious iwi, very I suppose proactive iwi partner. Not many organisations, if any, provide us with direction and opportunity to take a deep dive into what those commitments mean, but also planning a roadmap moving forward around what change we can see to better our communities that we serve. Once again, we shouldn't look at a treaty settlement as a requirement. We should look at a treaty settlement as a way that we can embed a deep relationship that's committed to achieving environmental and community outcomes. And I deliberately say those two things in that order. Environment first and community second, because our obligation to our environment is what I think is currently under pressure. So I welcome the opportunity for us to support in any way, shape or form we can the outcomes of the treaty settlement review and monitoring. Because if it doesn't look different, what was the point? What's the point of a treaty settlement if we're not going to do anything different? So different has to look like something, and it doesn't have to look like Mount Everest. It just has to look like something. So we're Ngāti Toa very keen to lean in and support the council in that journey in any way, shape we can. And finally, the kaupapa investment. I'd just like to make one comment. I think the transparency of any investment the council makes needs to be such that you are comfortable and confident that the investments that you are making and anything that you support are delivering on the expectations that you have. And I think kaupapa investment funding should be no different. But what I would encourage you to do is balance that against the weight that you give other investments that you make, because everyone should be accountable for the investments that they receive, and everyone who's investing in something should be comfortable that those tests are being met. It just sometimes can be perceived that the test that we give some investments is not a similar test that we give others, and that's just an observation rather than an evidence-based reflection. I hope that makes sense, and I don't want to go too much further into that, but we value the relationship and the commitment that we have from the council, and we're committed to doing whatever we can to make this relationship succeed. Ka pai. Thank you.
Kia ora, Rawiri.
I didn't even get a bell, see?
No,
That's
you
pretty
didn't.
good, eh?
You did well. So we've open for questions. Yeah. Councillor Connolly.
Thank you. Despite the lack of jokes, it was a really timely reminder for me, particularly the first part of your kōrero where you talked about relationships rather than compliance. And I know that one of my weaknesses is to be too action focused and not enough people focused. So just on that subject, like when we see actions coming from or aspirations coming from an iwi around wastewater discharges, for example, which we know with the government introducing wastewater standards that we're probably not going to even have the power to put them in a plan. That power's been taken away from us and really poor standards introduced nationwide instead. Like, how do you see us responding to a request like that when we don't have the power to implement it in the plan? And if we did, that would be falling into the trap of being more compliance focused rather than relationship focused.
Thank you, Councillor. I think the easiest way to answer the question is I don't think it's wise for us to look to regulation to be the answer to the challenges that we have. And I say that in that regulation has created a deficit for our taiao that is the evidence is there. Every indicator that you can think of has gone backwards, and we've had regulation in place to try and mitigate or avoid that. I don't think regulation is the answer because for the very reason you've identified, a new government or a new council could come in and change the goalposts. I think the answers truly sit in the hearts and minds and the aspirations of the people. And regulation kind of outlines what you can do, but often it doesn't outline what you can't do. And there, I think, is the opportunity in that non-regulatory space to create some real good wins. Because there will always be things thrown up that challenge us. Doesn't matter which government's in, really, or council. That's not really an answer to the question, but I'd kind of frame it as, we get dealt the cards we're dealt, and we can't avoid that. But what we can do is measure the way in which we respond to that. And yeah, shouldn't be just what we're required to do. There are things that we can do that don't require that level of oversight.
Coalition of the Willing. Kia ora, Councillor Saul.
Thank you. Still also giving you an opportunity to throw in some jokes here with the second partai. I guess picking up your from the first point you had around the kaupapa funding and having that assurance that the outcomes are delivering and essentially everyone's safe and can, point to good decisions and good outcomes. And I completely agree with you on that. We have to do something different, or else what is a settlement for, as well as it's about the relationships in that space of non-compliance. Because I think once we get into that compliance, there's a certain inertia, or you're not really raising things to best practice. It's what is the kind of bare minimum bottom floor. So how can we see those positive outcomes, those relationships, somehow being captured and informed in the types of investment decisions? So picking up the wastewater example, we all know that it's not fit for purpose. But when we get the spreadsheet that says it costs this much and it's going to cost our community this much, that's when everyone backpedals from tile. What can you see from, say, the Runanga space or with us as Greater Wellington of how can we get to those hearts and minds through the calculations? So, yeah.
I think it's there will never be enough money in the system to solve the problems. There will always be a shortage of money to solve the problems that we have, especially in the water space. So I think waiting for some magic check that's going to come, that's going to be written, because even if we did have the money in the system, I'm not convinced we'd invest it in the right way anyway. That's another conversation for another day. I think innovation is a big key, and I think looking at the way in which we do a lot of this stuff, we need to be broad brushed in the way we look and respond to these things. I think the deficit has become so great in the water space that it's hard to see a solution that's durable because we're just so behind in a lot of the things that we need to do. But I'll leave you with this. If our measure is being compliant, we lose sight of the very things that we're being compliant for, right? And so, and I gave the example in this room actually a little while ago that if there's an event which causes a flood to an area, the things we investigate are whether they're compliant with their consent, did they have the right sediment controls, rah, rah, rah. But no one is looking at the river that's polluted. Right? So the river's polluted, but our investigation and everything is about were we compliant. And if you were compliant, no problem. Actually, there's a problem. The river's polluted. So we turn our back to the very thing that we're creating the compliance for, which is the river or the lake or the stream, to ensure that someone can either be liable or not, or someone is. And I think the first thing we need to do is turn and face the river and have an obligation and a responsibility to that first. That's our first thing. You know, if someone gets injured at work, you know, they break their leg, you don't start an investigation before they go to hospital. Right? Well, I'd like to think that's so. The first thing we do, right, is fix the thing that we're trying to protect, which is the person, right? But what we do in the environment space is we go to the compliance. Was the sediment control, was it compliant? And we lose sight of the, yeah. So we need to treat a river like a person, but we've kind of heard that before somewhere. Yeah. Ka pai.
Whanganui tū hoi. Well, tēnā koe i te rangatira, ngā mihi nui mō tō whakaro, mō tō kōrero i tēnei wā. We look forward to coming to see you and looking at your environmental plan in the future. Hopefully some of us will still be around. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou.
Yes, and all those councillors who are tucking your name back in the hat, all the very best for the upcoming election. I'm sure the people will make the right choice.
Kia ora. Please join us for morning tea if you'd like, Rawiri. It'd be lovely to see you. Kia ora, morning tea whānau. got a quorum in the room. Let's make a start. Kia ora.
Yeah.
Kia ora korua. No mai. Anō. No mai hoki mai. So, next on our agenda is kaupapa investment. Over to Tanya and Nicola.
Kia ora koutou. This paper is for information, and it's a response to a request for supplementary information. So we've just divided the paper up into two sections to answer those questions. Just a reminder that the request was around the financial impacts of kaupapa investment model and the insurance model, including reporting on delivery against funding. So before we go into a bit of a presentation around examining those parts of the paper, I just want to draw on probably around the conversations and the presentations we've just had, and that is the framework and the programs within this paper is a relationship-driven investment tool where accountability lives with mana whenua and Greater Wellington on delivering outcomes. You'll see that in the summary paper where we have outcomes relating to ourselves and to mana whenua, and we join together in the middle to create a program of work. It's just a reminder again that this is a little bit different to how we may usually operate in working and contracting. It's an investment model. And I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. What we'll do is we'll dive into the agreement, the presentation, and it's really important to probably highlight that the parts that we're about to see are environmental group-driven mahi. We also plan on rolling this out across the organisation as an innovative partnership approach for all the work that Greater Wellington Regional Council does in the community and the region. But we're starting with the environment group as part of that. So we'll get rolling with us.
Kia ora koutou. We'll just take you through these slides. And these relate to the paper. So on this diagram, you can see the table shows the one-page summary of the agreement with Ngāti Toa, and it involves alignment between the Ngāti Toa outcomes and the environment group outcomes. And we've grouped together work to achieve 10 kaupapa focused programs, which equals 19 of our work programs, and financially it's totaling 420,000. This is a current agreement underway right now, so we're not ready to report on the results, but we still wanted to give you some results to date. So that red box on the top right highlights the example on the next slide. So this example is one around working with Ngāti Toa together on catchment planning, which of course is from our language, putting our catchment approach in place, but from Ngāti Toa's language, them exerting their own tino rangatiratanga over their own integrated, holistic te ao Māori look at the world, with the heart of it being Porirua Harbour. And so we've just got some commentary on some of the activities that this investment agreement is supporting. And of course, it aligns completely with the Harbour Accord and the number of workshops that we have going on to bring together multiple agencies, community members, Ngāti Toa and ourselves to identify solutions and get better value out of the work that we are already all doing. Te Atiawa, same model, same table that summarises the agreement, but these are bespoke, so they really are trying to align our outcomes together to achieve shared outcomes that are relevant to each partnership. So this one is same but different, different amount of money, slightly different kaupapa, and again trying to align our outcomes and Atiawa's outcomes together. And again, we've just circled one example to give you an update on the progress underway. And this particular one is a more practical example, which is working in supporting the establishment of a nursery. And of course, this particular nursery builds on the Jobs for Nature program that transitioned across was it December, January? So just in the last 7 or 8 months has transitioned across. So that's another more practical example of one of the investment outcomes we're working together on. Next one is Ngā Hapu's agreement. Again, similar sort of idea where we're aligning our outcomes together and bundling our work programs so that they're delivering against kaupapa investment outcomes. And this one we've put 2 examples in to give you an update on work in progress. And the first one is all about the monitoring. And this one very much links to the Kapiti Whaitua implementation program. It really was instigated through those discussions, although again, it's not a new idea. Of course, Ngā Hapu wants to understand the health of its waterways and be involved in that. So this is funding that allows that to actually happen in practice. And there's a number of attributes to it as well, including some modelling work as well as some practical monitoring and sampling work. And the second area is around how Ngā Hapu may be able to get more actively involved in compliance and monitoring work, not for freshwater health outcomes, but for consent compliance and other potential impacts from activities on Te Taio. And the Rangitane one, again, same model where we're trying to align our outcomes with their outcomes and bundle work together for these shared outcomes. And the example that we're sharing here for Rangitane is how we're working together on their hura whenua process. And in particular, we're making good progress in the flood space about how do we work differently and understand their view of the world in progressing this work together. And I think that might be my last one. Let me see. Yes, it is. So happy to go back, answer any questions or support more on that.
Kia ora, thank you for that. Councillor Connolly.
Morena, I have a couple of questions. So my first one is, how are these outcomes, strategic outcomes, kaupapa outcomes negotiated? I guess there'll be some things that Greater Wellington would want delivered and some things that iwi are keen to do, and how do we marry those up? Further to that question, if there's something that Greater Wellington is keen for someone to do, i.e. lay traps in this particular area of bush, and that wasn't one of the things that iwi listed as one of the things as part of their kaupapa outcomes, is there still a process to I guess, negotiate with iwi for them to deliver that service outside of the kaupapa agreement? And how do we do that? And how do we, I guess, what's in, what's out? And my other question is probably quite simple. That memorandum of partnership that you've put in there, what status does that have at the moment, given there's quite a few things in there that are out of date?
Okay, I think I'll start in the middle question and see where we go. But actually, I will start from the top. You're right, these components are negotiated. They actually start off at the GM and CE level. So it's a conversation, a mana ki te mana kōrero around expressing outcomes, work done together and possibilities before it goes into a more of a management operational level where we come together as 2 organisations across that. Internally though, however, there is a whole process getting undertaken at the same time, which is a little bit of a feeling out of the next 3 years, what's available and what work can be done in partnership, or what work are we thinking about getting done in partnership. So it's quite an iterative process internally before it goes external. And those are actually run as co-design clinics within the organisation as well to kind of really sort out the opportunities, and then it gets bundled up and taken to the kōrero with the right people with iwi. And from there, there's a further co-design process that happens. So I would say that there are works going on before we come and meet in the middle and have those conversations. And to be honest, mana whenua have been telling us for decades the priorities of their people and their whenua. So it makes it easier to start to form those connections. Yeah, so that's how it's done in a practical sense. And also, each iwi does it different too. There are parts of this process where iwi have come with their plan and gone, this is what we've got, what do you have? You know, so it's what that represents is that actually if we're not ready for that or no one's ready for that, how can we build that into the future as well? So there's quite a few components there. So that's that part.
Mention the contract part next, or shall I?
Yeah, so you talked about how work might be come a little bit into the process if it's not thought about at the right time. Yeah.
Or I guess, like, if we have a particular piece of work that we would like to see if iwi would like to deliver, kind of, I guess, out, you know, just more as a traditional contract. And if they don't want to deliver it, we'd probably just go to the market. But how does that sit outside of the kaupapa funding? And just making sure, because I think there's been some not misunderstanding, but some lack of clarity around what's in the funding versus what are separate contracts that are paid for under separate, you know, pots of money.
Yeah, so we're going through a transition through that. So what's happened is we have kaupapa funding, as we described. There are some components that are negotiated again at the table where here's some opportunities as mana whenua interested. Some of those opportunities might look like, for example, plant procurement and nursery procurement that looks maybe different every year potentially. We're working through a process where currently it sits inside a procurement opportunity itself, so it can be negotiated at that level. A little bit like you're saying, it's a contract for service. But what the intention is that will further and build into actually a partnership, a project itself, or a partnership opportunity. And while the procurement part of that is really important, there's those other elements that perhaps aren't thought about inside that, which is actually, should mana whenua be the only ones planting on their ground? Should the plants be procured? Should be sourced from ngāhere from that area? All those things start to create that connection of actually becomes a partnership project. Yeah.
So I still, I guess I'm still a little unclear. So I hear what you say that we're still separately providing contracts in a more traditional sense that may or may not go to mana whenua, and if they do go to mana whenua, we may look to incorporate them or aspects of them into the kaupapa funding kind of in the future. But I guess I am sort of keen to know a delineation. Maybe that's just my brain. But the other question was around that memorandum of understanding, or whatever it is, that 2013 document, and what status that has.
Okay, I'll try and answer this one. The memorandum of partnership is still a foundation document within this organisation and how we work with mana whenua. I think the outdated bits we were referring to is maybe the shifts in mana whenua and post-settlement entities and settlement. Yeah, I think that's something that we need to look at and review in the future. But at this stage, we still have other iwi going through that process as well. And what does that mean? Do we keep changing over years and years and try and connect to the right time at the right place? Or do we sit and wait and get a clearer understanding of how that works? But the other thing to mention is that our relationship has evolved regardless of the memorandum of partnership as well. I think that's a really important component to this, and we'll probably hear today too that, you know, we have significant levers now within settlement commitments as well to contribute to, I guess, making sure we're not the word compliant, but we're at least enabling our partnership in the right ways.
I've got a quick part. So in terms of the settlements, the partnership with Greater Wellington, and what the future looks like for kaupapa investment funding, can you give us a bit of sense about what that might look like, particularly as there's still some things in the pipeline that require I'll give you an example of somebody who sits on the Whitireia board. There's an agreement that we that get handed back under the settlement. The implications of that are significant in terms of cost of running a maunga across the many relationships, including DOC, RNZ, Greater Wellington, local councils have a view as well. What does that look like in the future for those sorts of things? Because the one thing I've learned from today is how important and valuable relationships are, and the value of the 6 that we're currently sitting here with 6 iwi who are willing to play ball with us finally. And part of that was that agreement. I'll come back to that issue in a bit. So could you give us a sense of that direction?
Yeah, I'm probably just going to draw on that this kaupapa investment is one tool for partnership. It's only one tool. You know, it's the interlocking components of all the things you've probably heard today there make the full suite of work that needs to be done in the partnership space. So I hope that kind of answers the question. It's just, yeah.
Thank you very much. Kia ora for that. Let's go to item 7. Suggested principles to guide the formation of governance arrangements for the incoming council. Kia ora, Brett. Welcome.
Madam Chair, before we carry on, I actually have a process recommendation. What is in this paper is quite far-reaching, and it totally relates to the next council. And there's at least 4 people around this table that are not going to be at the next council. There could be more of us. And I'm actually feeling quite uncomfortable about this paper, not because of what is in it, but the fact that we are making or trying to make a decision for the next council, even if it just says guiding principles. I am actually not comfortable about making that decision. And so, therefore, I would like to move that this paper lie on the table for the next council rather than us making a decision on it now. If it was just a receipt paper, it wouldn't be an issue, but we are actually being asked to make a recommendation.
Councillor Lees.
Thank you. I'd like to second that. Thank you. Yes, fine. Anyway, being aggressive. No, I think yeah, I'd like to also second that motion. I think it's about being respectful of the democratic process, and it's I think it is. I don't see any urgency. I think it is something for the next council to take on board. It is about passing the baton on, and I think it is about respecting the democratic process and for allowing the next council to actually own it.
Councillor Connolly.
I guess point of order for Lucas, I'm not sure that it can lie on the table because we wrap up and then we start again. So in the spirit of kind of wrapping up, I wondered if we could discuss it today and maybe change the recommendations more along the lines of these are some learnings from the Tiriti committee about how partnership has influenced our thinking around governance. And then potentially, obviously staff would have to carry this forward, but present it again in the new year because I don't think we can carry it forward. And it seems a good opportunity to have the discussion while we're here.
In terms of process, so I think to have an item lie on the table, the motion first needs to be moved and seconded, and then that can be put as a procedural motion in which there is no debate. Otherwise, if you want to do that now, that would allow discussion on the item. If you want to move that recommendation now, it will be a withdrawal of the item from the agenda, in which case we do have a mover and seconder, in which case it needs to go to the vote.
But Lucas, yeah, this committee is wound up.
Yep. In terms of if it does line the table, it lies on the table and then it just disappears, I guess. In which case it can come back into the new training for the governance arrangements and discussions. But
Kia ora, Chair. Just before we go to Francis, officers, we did have quite a long discussion before presenting this paper as to what the intent of it was and how it would be received and reflected on, and it really was an idea to bring some thinking, some reflections from the last 3 years, a brand new committee that we hadn't had in play before, with a lot of good debate and discussion over the last 3 years. The intention wasn't to lock this council into anything they're uncomfortable with going into the future, bearing in mind the committee, along with all committees, is disestablished. It was a reflective piece. It's similar to what Councillor Connolly has talked about. I think we're quite open as to the way you want to play it, but the point was to put on the table some thoughts and thinking of staff, having worked with and observed the process over the last 3 years, as this committee in its current tenure starts to conclude its life. So that was just to be clear on what the intent of the paper was.
Kia ora, Francis.
Chair, I firstly just want to reiterate everything that the officers have advised you this morning in relation to this matter. I mean, you have before you a procedural motion under standing orders, which has been moved by Councillor Staples, and that procedural motion's been seconded by Councillor Lee. There's no debate on a procedural motion, so the next step is to put the motion to the vote. If the motion is successful, the matter is left to lie on the table and it will cease to exist at the end of the triennium. If the motion is not successful, then the consideration of the matter continues.
Thank you for the clarification. Can I say something? No. Okay, let's just put this to the vote. Can I, those who agree with the motion, can you please raise your hands? 1, 2, those who say no? Online? 3 online. 3 online. Can I vote?
yes, Chair.
Oh, I can't. What does that mean? What does that mean?
Can we just have a show of hands who voted no again?
Can we please have a show of hands who voted no again, please? No. No.
No.
I'm voting that this does not lie on the table because I would like to discuss it and be able to amend it.
The noes have it, so the motion has not passed.
So the next step is to move forward and we've got an officer introduction and then debate.
Thank you. Let's move forward. Thank you, Brett.
Kia ora koutou. So bringing this paper forward, I'll take it as read. Happy to answer any questions on that to start with.
So can Madam Chair, can I just understand the intentions of the second recommendation, which is considers the principles outlined in paragraph 28 of the report. When you wrote that in there, that is a consideration for the council as a whole. So it's that we should consider that now as the council, but also that the incoming council would consider that as well. So there's no distinction between this body of politicians and the next body of politicians. My question is, though, how do you bridge that gap? So you've got at least, I don't know how many new councillors, at least 5 new councillors. So between, let's say a decision is made on this today and recommendation 2 is approved, how do you then how do you transfer this intelligence to the next council?
Yeah, good question. I think that sort of forms up where this paper's come from in the first place, which was taking what we've learnt and how do we convey that to the incoming council to help the decisions, the conversations around how those representation and governance structures look like going forward. So over the course of probably this year mostly, the conversation's been how do we recommend? Is it a letter to the council? Is it recommendations for considerations amongst this group to then take forward? I think it was left relatively open because we've stopped short of saying this should be the way that it gets done.
So it's an FYI.
I think the paper
sort of reads like that, yeah.
And do with it what you want. Next council committee, should there be a Tiriti committee? Councillor Connolly?
I just sent a revised recommendation through to Lucas. I wonder if the committee could consider that along the lines of, so the first one is notes the insights, blah, 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 and then the second one is another noting recommendation that notes the learnings of the Tiriti committee and how that might influence governance and representation structures moving forward. So then there is no sense that we're trying to corral future councils, but still it allows us to take this forward and maybe present it again next training.
Rawe, shall we put that up to see if our committee are comfortable with that, please? That committee notes the insights from PW. Is that the one? Coming. Talk amongst yourselves briefly. Yeah. That's a good comment. Okay. That Te committee notes the insights from, is that right, from PwC? Second rec. Notes the learnings from the Tiriti.
Yeah, this hit the feature to learnings.
Is there such a word? No.
Yeah.
Yes, it is commonly used.
It's commonly used.
Oh, it's not.
That means nothing.
Well, I never went to English classes, so.
So do I. Oh, somebody have got another word that they want to suggest?
Insights, observations, 2 suggestions.
Insights, observations. Kia ora.
Is there an agreement to change notes to considers?
No. Notes. Okay. That Te committee, point number 2, notes the insights from Te Tiriti committee in terms of governance, structures and representation for mana whenua. Ka pai. Yes. Ka pai? So what happens next?
I'm happy to move both those recommendations.
Can I look for someone to second that? Kia ora iatna. Thank you. Any, do a motion or do a debate? Open to debate. Anybody? Kia ora. Councillor Lee.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I think you had me at notes, but I still like learnings. And I think, yeah, so you had me at notes. I think it is respectful, and it is about passing the baton on to the next council, because we are looking at 5, could be more, so it is quite a fresh council. It is about that baton change, and it's not for us to tell how the next council should decide. So, yes, you had me at notes. Thank you.
There's no more debate. I'm not sure.
Okay, there's no more debate. Can I put the motion to the floor? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Kia ora. Against? Carried. Next item is.
Jesus. Usually when they talk, everybody bloody talks. Oh, please get that off.
We've got a gremlin. Number 8, Greater Wellington's treaty settlement commitments. Kia ora, Carl. Kia ora, Carl. I like your writing. Over to you.
Kia ora koutou. I will take the paper as read. There's a few things I'd like to emphasise in going through it. As outlined, this particular paper was produced in response to the committee's request in May for information in detail about Greater Wellington's treaty settlement commitments. Greater Wellington's work and settlements predates that, alongside the timing of deeds and legislation with our respective partners. As you've already heard very well this morning, and grateful having Rangitane and Ngāti Toa here to speak to this directly to you, so there's very little I can add. We have provided a subset of the acknowledgements that the Crown has made to our partners in Attachment 1. These acknowledgements are more specific to Greater Wellington's functions in relation to Te Taiao, infrastructure, public works. There is a much broader set of acknowledgements that the Crown has made, and these commitments, I wish you all well for your upcoming elections. These commitments are relevant for you in your current role and in future roles, and endure, as do the relationships with mana whenua. In Attachment 2, we have included the last paragraph of a much longer apology, and in that particular paragraph is the Crown's recommitment to a Tiriti-based relationship. This is something that often our partners have said is important that we're cognizant of, and any kind of conversation that we get on the detail of specific commitments, I encourage to be read in light of the context of these apologies. Attachment 3, we have some Greater Wellington commentary about the bespoke arrangements that Greater Wellington is party to. Many of you will have your own interface and experience with different parts of these arrangements. In Attachment 4, I know Councillor Connolly and both your specific questions about detail, and also your reflection during this committee around specifics and of relationships.
as part of our review, there's some differences between the deeds and the legislation, so we've replicated, make sure that we've got those commitments in there. We've deliberately not numbered them to not get into the detail of counting, to make sure that I suppose want to give assurance that we're going through these with each of the parts of Greater Wellington, and that as we outline in the next steps in preparations for our annual reporting. If you wanted to go through and count the rows in attachment 4, there's 64 of them in there. And to contextualise that, there are, I suppose, 812 commitments that the Crown is monitoring other agencies in relation to our partners. So it is very much about Greater Wellington playing our part in the restoration of relationship alongside other agencies. You can see the next steps in the paper in terms of our setting up our reporting mechanisms for our annual report. As we noted in the May Tiriti paper, council staff said this would occur once the systems are in place, and so that's being progressed. The next set of appointments for the Waitangi Moana Statutory Board and the 50-day apart board will occur in the next training before the end of the year as part of the new council process. Included in there, Greater Wellington and partners continuing to have discussions on the role and nature of tūpoko taio. And that's, I suppose, included in the context of phase 3 of the government's reform program, where the government has stated it will uphold the intent and undertakings made in treaty settlements. For our mana whenua partners, where settlement redress connects with the RMA, we understand that the Crown will need to be having conversations with our partners about that during reform, and we expect any revisiting of these is going to impact our partners. And also outlined at our May committee, this committee affirmed our approach to protecting Māori rights and interests in our submissions and government proposals and legislative changes, and we're working on those position statements, including in relation to settlements and other matters that you've already discussed today, to prepare for responses for phase 3. I don't know if you want to. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Saul, Councillor Conley. Thank you. Thank you for laying this all out. Just a bit of a reflection and a question. I think in this triennium, I hope all my council colleagues would agree that there's been a tremendous amount of growth in our understanding and learning of the, I guess, historical context on which we all exist on, in terms of what is the background of the settlements. Like, some of us even went to the Kahununu Crown Apology. We've also built our relationship with our mana whenua partners. So I think for some of us, there's probably been a paradigm shift and a growth in our own understanding of why we do this work. And so in the next steps, my question is, how will some of this material inform the induction for new councillors, and perhaps using attachment 4 as a starter point of these are actually our statutory obligations, as a fairly neutral way to begin an opening into a lot of the stuff that we've learnt. So just wanted to suggest that as a potential next step, is where might you consider some of this material informing new councillors' induction, which would then lead into some of the other activities and opportunities we've had to learn about our Te Tiriti obligations.
Kia ora, Councillor. We are actively preparing now for councillor induction. Treaty settlements will form an important.
And also, I wonder if some of our outgoing colleagues may feed into that, and also because there's such a variety of perspectives and levels of knowledge that came in, I think it would be quite useful to survey some of the various councillors in terms of their experience and what they learned and took from it.
Certainly very open.
Just to help Carl out on the second question. You, as a council, you have your away day coming up, and that's really absolutely designed, Councillor Swarth, to allow all the council to reflect on all the things of the Trinium, and this would be absolutely part of, and including what you might aspire to in terms of a new induction program.
Okay, third crack at the question.
Third crack at the question. Well, you know, I had to fill in for Councillor Kirk Benand, right? I have to keep his mantle. So we will have an opportunity to discuss this at the away day. Okay, there you go. There was my question.
Councillor Connolly.
So the table at tab 4 is awesome, and this was exactly what I was hoping to see, because how many lines did you say there was? 64, 62,
Cool.
60. I know we're not counting, but it was quite nice to see like the variation in that some of them are just kind of ensure access, for example. So things that we should be able to do operationally without too much effort, whereas some of them are bigger pieces of work, right? So I guess my worry was that they were going to be 64 like massive projects that we needed to resource. As it turns out, reading through these, quite a few of them are kind of procedural, so not too onerous for us. But as part of your next steps in terms of the monitoring, I guess I would like to see kind of a status on each of them. So the procedural ones should be able to be just tick, whereas the more meaty ones like the Waitangi Statutory Board, you know, will obviously have a bit more of a program associated with them, and then getting into like timelines and who's actually responsible for delivering them. I guess even for those procedural ones, we need someone to kind of hold them, because I don't want them to be forgotten. For example, us to close access and not remember that we have an obligation under a Tiriti commitment to provide it. So someone still needs to be kind of the gatekeeper of these. So yeah, these are just more bits of information that I'm looking forward to next term. But I assume that that's kind of what you'll be doing as part of your implementation phase.
Correct. And through the chair, all the commitments have a responsible lead in Greater Wellington. It'll be part of our internal reporting in preparation for our annual report. We do have, there's still a couple that we know the status of, and we're gathering the evidence for those. And just for, I suppose, for this particular report, didn't want to present the detail of that in terms of focusing the attention on the procedural commitments. I can assure you the processes are in place and are being put in place for those. There was one particular point in the paper around refreshing our view, what in the paper we call, I suppose, the bespoke arrangements, about whether we are actually in discussion with our partners, realising the potential and possibility of those. And so that's, you know, the overarching apology in terms of the refresh and commitment to Tiriti-based relationship. That's within, I suppose, Greater Wellington's broader commitment to Tiriti, including our legislative requirements. But those are, yeah, through review with our partners, wanting to make sure that we do and we are planning to realise the potential of those. The specific commitments that are underneath there that are within attachment 4 will also have a detail and rigour in how they're being reported, but we just want to get the order right, that we're focusing on the right things.
I also just wanted to thank you for highlighting the fact that the treaty settlement process is not just about, I guess, actions moving forward. That's another word like learnings that Yana probably dislikes. It's also about an apology and some more kind of less tangible reflections. So it was really nice to be reminded of that, and how those apologies, I guess, actually relate to Greater Wellington as a vehicle of the Crown, and what we need to do to uphold the intent of those apologies moving forward.
Councillor Lee.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. The Tukataio Committee, I know it's embedded in legislation. It's quite a good 50-50 model. As the chair, I found it hasn't been too onerous. It's almost somewhat effortless. So, and I know we've achieved a lot through the two plan changes through, but But what's happening there? Are we getting some traction in terms of having our first meeting?
Through you, Madam
Councillor
Chair.
Ponta?
It is actually something that we've really tried to push with mana whenua. The key issue for them is their relationship with the council coming through somebody else's treaty settlement. So it has been a problem for us to actually try to advance that. We're looking also at the role of Kahununu PSG, really trying to dive into that with us. Of course, as they've been establishing their themselves as a PSG, that wasn't one of the things they prioritised. In fact, the Waitangi Moana Statutory Board has been that one vehicle that they have. But it hasn't been through lack of trying, but I think that's one of the things that we realise about the settlement processes, that it's when they're ready. If I take the example of the Cook Strait Forum, you have Ngāti Toa that's fully settled, but they're not at a stage yet where the Cook Strait Forum and bringing that to fruition is actually in their purview. That's in ours, but it's not in theirs. So we constantly play a game of, are we ready yet? No, we're not. Can we do it in some other way? No, we can't. So we're often at the, not mercy, but at the direction of mana whenua.
Thank you. I think timing is everything, and it's best to wait and rather than race ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for your paper today, very informative and very helpful. Just before we close today, kia ora, can I just take this opportunity to, it's the last meeting for the Tiriti or Waitangi Komiti, just to reinforce, I guess, I believe this is actually the only Tiriti Komiti that does exist at a local council, regional council level across the country. And we went to a number of hui and realised that, actually. We don't think we did at the time. I want to take the opportunity to thank you as my councillor colleagues for supporting the establishment of this komiti. We've learned a lot on the journey, and I feel like today was a great momentous day for us because we had we always have fantastic agendas, but there were some meaty issues in there for us to discuss. I was reminded that actually relationships do matter, and I think in the last 3 years we've continued to build trust, but I feel like we're at a place now where 60 we can sit around the table and agree and like what, well, not always agree, but like what we're doing in terms of our relationships with them. Can I particularly thank you, Nigel and Monica, for the staff that have supported the Treaty Committee, not just Tuhunga Whiriwhiri, but also all of you out there who provide input to all the papers that we've received. We've had submissions that have been driven by your team, and I thank you for that. I think Greater Wellington, the people of Greater Wellington, thank you for that as well. Lots more ahead. Thank you for putting your faith in a new person who sits at the chair table. It's been insightful. I do hope that I get another opportunity. I do hope that we get a council that does believe that a treaty committee is important and valuable. So we will, just to give you a heads up, I'll finish with a karakia and then we're going to finish with a waiata ko te aroha. Kia ora, in which case you will all stand. Kei te inoi tātou ki te karakia unuhia. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te urutapu nui. Kia wātu, kia mama, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua i te aratakatu. Koia te rongo. Whakairi ake ki runga. Kia tina, tina, hui e, tā ki e. Te aroha, te whakapono. Me te rangi mai e tātou tātou e. Te aroha, te whakapono. Me te rangi mai e tātou tātou e.